Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott. Sirui is back with a unique set of Cine lenses called the Vision Prime-1 series. This includes a 24mm, 35mm, and 50mm T.1 1.4 lenses that are all matched, and as you can see, you can get as a part of a kit. But what is most interesting and unique about this is not those focal lengths or those aperture / t-stop ratings, but rather that the mounts here are user replaceable. And so what that means is that with each one of these lenses is going to be included E mount, L mount, RF mount, and Z mount options for each lens, or if you happen to get them in a kit like this, it means that all of them will come with all of those different mount options. So 4 different mount options, the 4 major full frame lens mounts at this point. The mounts all have a weather sealing gasket on them, and so that is nice that even if you swap them out, you do still have a weather sealing gasket there, and they can all be easily changed. As you can see here, it took me about a minute and a half, more on that in just a moment, with the included toolkit that you are given here, which fortunately does include some extra screws, which is always good when you're working with small screws. And so today we're going to dive in and take a look at how this actually plays out. Now, these are Cine lenses, so I'm going to give them the same kind of deep dive optical breakdown that I often do. I will point out if there's anything that stood out to me optically one way or another, but for the most part, I'm going to be looking at these more in their overall performance and what stood out to me in just of what I liked and what I didn't like. So let's start by talking about some of the things that I found I liked while reviewing these lenses. First of all, one thing that I love about matched sets like this is the fact that you are going to get very consistent color matching. And that's one of the things that Sirui and others like them have set out to do with a set of Cine lenses like this. Obviously, when you're getting Cine footage, even more so than shooting stills, it's very important to get a consistency of color. And as you can see here, as I go from the 24mm to the 35mm and then to the 50mm, you can see that we're getting a consistent color response across all 3 of them. Also, what is nice is these are all a standardized size, and so they all have the 72mm up front, which allows you to do matte boxing, but also they're consistent in terms of where both the focus and then the aperture rings are located. And so not only can you set up gearing for any one of them, but then you can set up gearing to where you can hot swap them without having to worry about repositioning any kind of gearing setup or anything similar like that. So that is nice. Also nice is the fact that they are standardized in terms of their weight. There's about 11 grams difference between the lightest to the heaviest of these. More on that in just a moment. But what that means also is that it means that the center of gravity is going to be similar on all of them all. And so if you're setting up, for example, on a gimbal and you've already done a balance with one, it doesn't matter which one, you should be able to swap off the lens and get the exact same balance. And of course, again, the same positioning for both the manual focus and aperture rings. They're also all very bright. These are full frame lenses, and they have a t-stop rating of 1.4. So that means that they're actually really bright, because I'm assuming the maximum aperture is f1.4, and they've done a good enough job with the optical design that you're not losing light as it's measured from where it enters into that entrance pupil or the aperture, and then what actually reaches to the sensor itself where it's measured with the t-stop. And so nice and bright, that is great. Furthermore, these are not just full frame, but they actually have 46mm coverage, and so a few extra millimeters of coverage. And so what they will do is they will cover full frame even in open gate. And so they're a little bit over-engineered, but that's great because it means that you've got different options. If you have a camera that can shoot open gate, it means you've got different options for your framing and what you're going to do with that kind of footage. So a little bit of extra playroom, wiggle room around the edges of the frame. And so obviously that is very appreciated as well. Also, they are designed to have minimal amounts of focus breathing. It's, again, minimal doesn't mean none necessarily, but it does mean that they're all pretty good in that regard. And as you can see, for example, some of these pulls here, that there's not a lot of obvious amount of breathing. The 24mm and 35mm have a high 12 blade count, whereas the 50mm has like an exceptionally high 18 aperture blade count. It is very rare that I see apertures with that many blades, but as you can see here, as I do an aperture rack, you can see the specular highlights, start to shrink as I'm closing down the aperture. But what you're also going to note is that they stay very circular, and so that is excellent as well. Also important here is that across all of them, the amount of distortion is low. So that means that there's going to be less corrective work needing to be done. So I like that as well. I also think that these are nicely made lenses. And so obviously I've already noted that all of these different mounts, they come with weather sealing gasket there. There is also, I believe, a little bit further weather sealing in the lenses themselves, but they are basically all metal here. They feel good. There's a good consistency in terms of the behavior of the aperture ring, but then also of the manual focus ring across them all. They all have a 270-degree focus throw, and they all work really nicely. These feel like nicely made lenses. There's nothing that's plasticky or cheap feeling about them at all. They actually feel very, very nice in their build. So I mentioned a very small weight difference, and so that goes from as little as 590 on the 24mm, or I can't remember if it's 24 or the 35mm, to as much as 602 grams on the 50mm. And so only a 12-degree variance from heaviest to lightest. What that means is they all weigh out at 1.3 pounds. And so a very, very small variance there difference. I find that sometimes Cine lenses don't have a great minimum focus distance, but that's not really true here. They actually all have a decent minimum focus distance, and they all have a maximum magnification of between 0.15 and 0.16 times, which is nothing exceptional, but it's at the very least, it is average or even slightly above average. And so I think that that is great. As you can see here, I'm going to show you a video from start to finish, and here, even with me demonstrating a few extra things along the way, it took me less, I had everything laid out, but less than a minute and a half to swap one of these lens mounts. It's literally a matter of taking the included screwdriver. There are 4 Phillips screws. Now, a little bit further out on the lens mount, there's actually Torx screws. There's not a Torx screwdriver because you're not actually touching the Torx screws. It's the Phillips that are there that are a little bit tighter inside, and it's just a matter literally of unscrewing 4 screws, pulling the mount away, taking the new mount. And one thing that I do like about the mount design is that there's 4 different notches on them. 3 of them are similar sized, and a 4th one is the larger. That 4th one is only going to fit in one spot. So it makes sure that you're always lining up the lens mount in the right place, and so that everything is placed as it should. So that's awesome. And so very easy to do. Put those 4 screws back in, and away you go. It's just that simple. They do include a lot of additional screws. I don't know if that implies a lack of trust in your ability to replace screws, but I count here, I count a total of 24 additional screws that are included. And so that gives you us 6 sets in total of 4 screws. And so that means you've got 2 backup sets for all of them. That's great because, whereas I hope you're not going to lose that many screws, I suspect that you might lose 1 or 2 along the way if you're not careful. I would also recommend that don't do that mount swap in a dusty or dirty environment. The cleaner you can keep things, the happier you're going to be. Another thing that I like, should you happen to actually buy the 3-kit set, which I'll give you a little bit more on pricing in just a moment, is that the kit does come in this great Pelican style case. And so this case is waterproof, it is dust proof, it is shock proof. So in other words, if you've got them packed in here, even if they get knocked around or you're in adverse weather conditions, they're going to be well protected in here. That's a really nice bonus to have included with this set. And even if you don't buy the full set, even if you buy individual lenses, Siri's zippered nylon cases are actually quite nice. And so you're always getting something along the way. So how about things that I don't like? One thing that I will say, that this is kind of a general observation with these lenses and other Sirui lenses, I don't actually love their optical glass, and that has very little to do with sharpness, and it's a personal opinion. Some people like it just fine. But what I do find is that I just don't like the colors quite as well as what I do some other lenses, and so in terms of the color rendition, it's not necessarily my favorite. Now, to be fair, if you're shooting in some kind of log footage and you're using your own LUTs, you have a lot of control with how that final color look is going to play out, and so it may not be a big deal for you, but it's just something that I observed. I did note with one or two of the lenses that I did see a little bit of some green fringing there along the way, and so you know, they're not perfectly corrected in that regard. I did notice with the 24mm that there's a little bit more vignetting than what I saw with either the 35 or the 50mm lenses. But my list of criticisms is actually quite brief because, I mean, these are fairly compact, they're very nicely made, and I think that the ability to be able to hot swap those actual lens mount yourselves is actually a really valuable thing. It means that if you do future changes, you're not having to buy new lenses, and it also means that you can shoot on different bodies and mix and match by doing that. And so, I mean, that's fantastic, and the fact that it can be done so quick and easy, it's great. So finally, on pricing, the early bird pricing here is $549 for individual lenses, and that does include the 4 different mounts and includes that zippered case. Here's the kit that you can see that comes along with. If you want the full kit like this, it is $1,599. And so, that's actually a strong value if you actually want all 3 lenses, obviously, because not only are you saving $50 in terms of the total price, you're also getting the case thrown in there for an additional value. They say $200 of additional value. I suspect I could buy this case for cheaper than $200, but I'll give them that. It's a really nice case, and it's a really nice kit for that amount of money included. So at the end of the day, I think that if you're in the market for affordable Cine lenses and 24, 35mm and 50mm suit the focal lengths that you're looking for, obviously that's full frame. You can also shoot all of these in S35, and so that gives you another framing option. But I think that this is a really great kit, and I think it's a brilliant idea, the ability to swap these out like that. And it's something that actually has been tried in the past, and it's an idea that's maybe come full circle once again. But for Cine lenses in particular, where you're not really relying on electronics, it's pretty great. And while none of them optically just like blew my mind, I actually found them all to be quite good as well. And I like the look of footage, felt like there's a good amount of detail coming off of it. So at the end of the day, if you're in the market, these focal lengths fit the bill. I think that this is a pretty strong value here from Sirui. So if you want more information, you can check that out in the description down below. They're currently on Kickstarter, and then they'll move to a more traditional, marketing strategy and retail strategy after that. But there is probably some discounts to be had if you try out the Kickstarter. That's linked in the description down below. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and let the light in.